Hello
everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Laurel, the assistant manager here at Green Apple Books Park. Thank you to our in-person and online audience for joining us tonight for our event with Leigh Lucas and Lena Moses-Schmitt, celebrating Lena's debut poetry collection, True Mistakes. A little housekeeping, please check our event calendar on our website. We have a really great lineup, and Cara, our events manager, works really hard to get interesting authors and interlocutors here, like these two lovely people today. And please buy books from us. It helps us as a store and to continue to put on events like this, supports the authors who put their heart and soul into these books, and best of all, you get a new book out of it. And books are always available for purchase in-store or on our website. And then lastly, please take a second to just silence your cell phones. Was it creative pictures or?
Yeah.
Okay. Please just make sure the sound is off, and if you post, you can tag us. So tonight we're going to hear a brief reading from both Lena and Leigh, then a conversation, and we'll follow it up with audience questions and a signing line afterwards. A little bit about our guest today. Leigh Lucas is a writer in San Francisco. Her chapbook, Land Sickness, was selected by Chen Chen for the 2023 Sunken Garden Poetry Chapbook Award. She has been awarded residencies at Tin House, Community of Writers, and Kenyon, and has been recognized with AWP's Kurt Brown Prize, as well as with a Best New Poet nomination, Best of Net nomination, and multiple Pushcart Prize nominations. Leigh's poems can be found in Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Alta Journal, Smartish Pace, and elsewhere. She holds a BA from Stanford and an MFA from Warren Wilson. And Lena Moses-Schmitt is a writer and artist. Her debut poetry collection, True Mistakes, was selected by Patricia Smith for the Miller Williams Poetry Series and is forthcoming from University of Arkansas Press in spring 2025. Her work appears in Best New Poets, Ninth Letter, The Believer, Ecotone, The Rumpus, Narrative, The Yale Review, and elsewhere. She lives in New York, where she works as the Assistant Director of Publicity at Catapult, Counterpoint, and Soft Skull Press. And her book, True Mistakes, is the reason we are here tonight. So please join me in welcoming Leigh Lucas and Lena Moses-Schmitt.
Thank you, Laurel. Does it sound good or is it too loud? It's good? Okay, great. So excited to be here tonight. So excited to be celebrating Lena and her fabulous book. I'm so excited for all of you to read it. It is beautiful. And without further ado, I'm going to read a few poems and then send it over to the woman of the night, and then we'll do a little conversation up here. In conversation. So I'll start with a poem or two. The Year of the Wood Sheep. I once lived measured and cut, rigid among fish. I read the same books over and over. I ate oats in bed. Then came the year of the splash. Then came the year of the fog and the storm, then the year of forgetting. This is the year I recover from the blast. A spinning globe leads my way as I track Aurora Borealis, as I learn to speak in tongues and lick the paws of those who've left me. For me, the redwoods quake, the shark swims, and the baby says, uh-oh. Gracing spaces, I drop a shadow as big as anyone casts, then bigger. I will not ask myself how to read in the dark, or how your mouth, silent as a cat, spoke to me the only way I've ever heard it. There you are. There you are. And the second poem is called Department of Quiet Phenomena, and it has an epigraph that starts with it. Scientists have discovered trees talk through roots, owls warn through wing flash. Maybe rocks, too, vibrate in frequencies beyond our ears. Communication buzzes all around us, unrecognized. And that's by the poet Susan Briante. Poetry is to listen and speak at different frequencies. It denies lines in the sand, over land, over fistfuls of ocean. reminds us that if we grip fewer things, what we need remains. The rest sinks like stone. I know the world outside is cold, is violent, but here on the couch, we are in love. I stay quiet to say, because of you, I feel at home. When you call on a break from work, I envision you on a bench in the shadow of the Transamerica, hiding a midday cigarette. When I say there is so much beauty, this is what I mean. Thank you.
Thank you, Leigh. I am a big fan of Leigh's chapbook, Land Sickness, so I hope everyone picks it up tonight if they don't already have it. I highly recommend. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It means a lot that you're here tonight when you could be doing any other thing with your Thursday night. And thank you so much to Green Apple for hosting. I love this bookstore so much, and I went to so many events here when I lived in the Bay, so it is a great honor to be able to be back here tonight to read. And also, this event is co-hosted with the Ruby, and so I just wanted to say thank you to Peggy and the Ruby for co-hosting. The Ruby is a very special place, and it meant a lot to me during my time here, so thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Lena.
So yeah, I'm gonna read like 5 poems from my book, True Mistakes. And I guess I'll start off by saying that like a common theme running through these poems is perception and what happens in the mind when you look closely at something, and how that kind of close looking can be really transformative, but also deeply and pleasurably confusing. And I think that they are engaged with like a lot of questions about what does it mean to really see something, and is it possible to like truly see something? And a lot of the poems are particularly interested in what it feels like to look at art, and the actual experience of drawing and painting, and how those experiences help you understand and also process like grief, the past, your life. So the first poem I'm going to read is from a series that runs through the book, that are poems dedicated to basically like myself in the future. I started writing this series during kind of like a dark part of my life, when I was struggling with depression and anxiety, and it was like just post-lockdown, and I was basically grieving this notion of the future as I once understood it. And so I started writing these almost as a way to create a future self, in the hopes that if I wrote to her, she would exist. And because I also make visual art, I was also very drawn to this idea that we make the future almost in the same way an artist makes a painting, and how some of that making is purposeful and some of it is intuition or even accidental. So I'm going to start with one of those, and it's called Dear Future Me, number 11. You're a character made entirely of desire. I don't want a car or a career or even a house with a flight of stairs necessarily. I would like to live, though. The most unattainable commodity, a plot with no last page. You're very abstract. Blue growths and blue fields on a canvas. Of Joan Mitchell's painting, Les Bluettes, Lydia Davis wrote that in her confrontation of Mark's seemingly without symbol, she understood she couldn't understand. And that was a revelation. When I look at the painting, I think I'm seeing Mitchell as she builds her own seeing, closely and carefully, trial and error, which is how I make myself, reanimating a memory by moving back and forth over it until the familiar accumulates into the unrecognizable. You'll probably never meet me. We never see the same thing twice. Staying. Who cares who I might have been? The rain so loud I can pretend all of it is enough. And the wipers smearing color all over the windshield, confusing trees with street. The branches splash apart. The red traffic light in the arms of the blades jumps across the glass like sunrise, noon, sunset. Sunrise, noon, sunset. That is enough. Being warm and dry, like a child again in the dark car, is enough. Everyone imagines for them it will be different. Nothing will slow down. Nothing will grow old or die inside them. I can trick myself into believing all of it has yet to happen. The lake in the morning, the fog rising off it, your hair slicked back as you air, spreading echoes across the surface. The trees bent toward the water as if to watch. Or the night you spent slow hours pulling the stinger from my foot. What strangers, so light in years. I haven't yet fallen in love for the last time. If I am focused far enough, not even the first. All of it has yet to happen. Here I am, tumbling through space. Here I am, still new. My life washes in greens and burgundies across the vivid pane. And then the wipers clear it away. A field of vision opening up, as when I lift from the lake, reaching for the dock with one hand. That instinctual. Not grand or distinct as I thought it would be. The moment I decided to stop living toward every possible life and grab on to the one that appeared. So I kind of wanted to read like a California-y poem. And this poem I wrote when I was still living in Berkeley, and I used to walk to work every morning. And especially when I just moved to Berkeley, I was just kind of like in awe of how every walk I took in Berkeley was really, really beautiful. And this poem I wrote after one of those walks. It's called Thrive. Today, I find the neighbor's house transformed by a cloud of hydrangeas crowded around his door. An astonishment, my friend once called them, the collective noun she designed for this dilation of bright purple and blue. I'm jealous of these flowers, whose puberty and time to thrive is so obvious, you never have to wonder, as I do, heading into my 30th year, if I must have missed something, my own short window of shining. I take photographs of the flowers on my phone. It's the same impulse that makes me take photos of sunsets, though the image always develops deadened and small. The sun a wrinkled marigold head, foggy in its wrap of cellophane. Take being the crucial word. I'm stealing the sight and divorcing it from environment, making the image portable, aspirational because it's something I can hold. Not quite celestial, these hydrangeas, but each one still a sun setting into the bush. I grow so enamored, so astonished, and then so enamored with my ability to still grow so astonished after 30 years spent on Earth. I almost bend to smell them. But then the neighbor comes out to the porch. The wave of hydrangeas laps at his knees, and he looks at me like, "Can I help you?" And I force a laugh, say, "I was just taking pictures of your beautiful flowers." He smiles, holds out his palm, and says, "That will be $5, please." And though it's a joke, it doesn't really feel like a joke. It feels like maybe he really does think the beauty of the flowers in his front yard is private, not public, even though by now the hydrangeas exist, not just as an image on my phone, but in my mind, the way I must exist, somewhere in the mind of the man who, earlier at the bus stop, plucked me with his eyes going up and down and crooned, "You made my eyesight a whole lot better this morning." And later, I'll post my photos of these hydrangeas to the feed, my personal memory of them now communal, each bloom a symbol, deceptively public, as a woman on the street, each picture insisting, I'm happy, and I'm here, bright and last ditch as a signal flare. This next poem is after an abstract painter I really like named Helen Frankenthaler. And her work is really abstract, but a lot of it kind of hovers on this edge of abstraction and figurative, which is a threshold I find very exciting and generative. And the painting this poem is about is like less abstract than her others. Like you can kind of tell it's the nude torso of a woman. You can see her legs, but it still hovers on that edge of abstraction. And the poem is called Scene with Nude, Helen Frankenthaler, 1952. I have no memories in which I am not impossibly young. my experience formless as a flower's or a color's, yellow lights living briefly across a wall. Tomorrow I'll think of the me of today, and she'll remain illegible, letters on a deflated balloon. I have misjudged accuracy. Is it possible to paint myself so precisely I disappear? Can I remember myself so completely I'm erased? Unraveling to abstraction, a charcoal thatch like the one from which I came, is a method of survival. Whenever I try to understand myself, I suffer. What is that long green shape doing there, relaxed on the space I'd call the ground? I don't see anything I recognize here. Who am I to think I could deliver consciousness back into this room? Most true things are also impossible to decipher. The green shape. What is that green shape resting between two forms we can agree are likely legs? That green shape free, as if it was once part of the body and is now at last enlightened. Oh God, please don't tell me it's life. The kind of life only I could live and therefore do not want. Okay, one last one. It says, Dear Future Me, number 12. Here's how it's going lately. This morning, the minute I sat down to write a poem, the men outside in orange vests and hard white skies strapped over their heads started up their jackhammering. D, I typed, and set off an explosion of sound. My thoughts vibrated in my jaw. Every bandage on my brain ripped clean off. All the wise and gorgeous things I want the skill to say began to circle the drain. And I was left with this. Why do I like poems? Life continues, I guess, except it's very loud. Lately, I'm too tired to care about getting old. I never put my phone down. I scroll many futures away. I sleep many futures away. I write them away. The longer I live, the more the future disappears. Then again, at least when I type TYSM, I feel like a cool little snake wearing sunglasses. Don't mind me. I'm working through all the mind trash. Do you think of harming yourself? No, but I have other desires. I'm afraid. What if you're someone you don't want me to know? What if I'm someone you'll wish to disown? God, just leave me alone for once. Yesterday, on my just before dark walk, I saw a few pretty things. A gasp of birds flirting through the brown barcode of trees in the park. A shadow of a half ladder casting an H onto a roof, as if the light was starting to spell house. I imagined the sun with its giant typewriter smashing down the keys and was relieved. I'm just another person. There is such little use for fear. But of course, there are the things you know, and then the things you feel. Thanks.
Thank you, Lena. That was so beautiful. I'm so excited for everyone to read this book. It's it's absolutely breathtaking, and that was just a great little smattering of the different types of poems in this book. But the Dear Future poems, I'm glad you did a couple of those.
Thanks,
Those are really great. So we're just going to chat for a little while, and then we'll move to a Q&A. I wanted to ask you about the process of writing this book. I know it took you 10 years, which the poets in the crowd will know that's real. That's more common than you think, but it's still extraordinary. And what I'm so curious about is, after 10 years of generating poems, so many more poems than can fit into a collection, how did you go about thinking about revision and then also collecting the poems and assembling them in an order?
Yeah, good question. Well, yeah, I guess I'll say, God, I feel like this book kind of existed in different iterations over those 10 years. And for people who don't know how like the poetry book world works, it's like to get a book of poetry published, you're submitting it to like open reading periods and first book contests, and you're so basically just like submitting it to all these different like opportunities, and a lot of those opportunities cost money too. And so I graduated with my MFA in like 2014, and so was kind of like, and you know, when you have most places when you get an MFA, you have to have like a kind of like a book to graduate, like a manuscript length work of poems. And so I kind of was working those over for a few years, and then I started sending it out in like 2016 to 2018 under a different title. And over that period of time, you know, it was getting like finalist or semi-finalist in some of these reading series, and it was getting encouragement, but it didn't land anywhere. And eventually I was just like, I don't like any of these poems anymore. And if it became a book, I feel so far away from it, you know. And then I kind of stopped writing poems altogether for like several years, and I was working on other stuff. And then when I returned to writing poems, I was writing them a lot faster than I was used to. Like I was used to kind of like noodling over a poem for like anywhere from like a month to like 5 months, and just kind of like revising it to death before I was like really happy with it. Which is not to say that the poems I was writing really fast were all good. But I eventually was kind of like writing, you know, I was writing these like Dear Future Me poems, and I felt like I had found something that was like interesting to me, and this new material kind of just like led the way. And as far as like deciding how to order it and like what to put in, I don't know, it was all just like intuition. Wow. You know? Yeah. I mean, like, how does it work for you?
Oh
like,
my God. Well,
like, how do you decide? I think you have to just like pretend like you know what you're doing.
Totally. That's exactly right.
It just has to like feel right.
It has to feel right. Yeah, and I made it easy for myself by making it like a linear narrative. So
yeah.
Maybe I'll do that
next time, so it won't be 10 years.
Yeah. Very cool. Oh yes. Many of you know this already, but Lena is a fabulous visual artist too. Mm-hmm. And of course you hear, you know, references to paintings and to artists in a lot of her work, but also she talks a lot about the process of creating marks on a page or painting in the work. And I'd love you to talk a little bit more about how these different artistic practices inform one another, how you decide which form you're going to use when you sit down to create art.
Yeah. I feel like my love of drawing / painting and my love of writing poems all have to do with like the fact that I just like love imagery. And yeah, I do like a big part of my, you know, drawing life is like I do a lot of like graphic essays and comics. And that feels really similar to poetry to me, because like when I write out like the first draft of those, I'm kind of like writing line breaks. So like rhythmically they seem to operate the same way. I would say like, and also when I'm like thinking about writing a poem, it's like if the imagery can be captured in kind of like a way that is compelling to me in words, then I kind of know that I want to like move in the direction of a poem. Because with like comics and graphic essays, it's like you're not going to be describing the image, you're going to be like drawing the image, which actually often kind of like in my head about the actual like writing part of like the prose part of a, you know, comic or like a graphic narrative, because I can't be as like fun with the language, because it's like the language is working with the image and then like creating metaphor together, you know what I mean? Yeah. So those are some ways I guess they like cross-pollinate, but I think I'm just generally really interested in like, this sounds like really abstract, but like consciousness and like what happens in consciousness as you're drawing. It's kind of like this part without language, and figuring out how to put language around it is so like wild and freeing to me. Mm-hmm. I think both in terms of like looking at a painting, but also like making a painting, which is I think why I like abstract painters quite a bit too.
So cool. If Lena also makes this fabulous Substack that's like the only one I never miss.
Wow, that's so kind.
It's beautiful. It's comics every couple of weeks, but you can see her thinking aloud and drawing, and it's beautiful stuff. But yeah, so definitely subscribe to her Substack.
Thanks, Leigh, my publicist.
Yeah. Cool. Oh yeah, so the opening of this book has a very cool poem. It's 4 or 5 lines long. It's very spare. And the title of it, I'll tell you because the title is so cool, is Opening Questions for God or the Artist. And I was hoping, I'm going to read it, and then I was hoping you could talk a little bit about this piece because it's super unique. It's such a cool opening to this book. It says, how do you maintain a sense of awe? A hill or a skyscraper? When do you sense you're finished? How do you know you've begun? This is the opening to this collection. It's like stunning.
That's very nice.
Can you tell us a little bit about this poem and about introducing God on the first page?
Oh,
very ambitious.
Yeah, so this poem, I kind of like don't even view it as a poem. Like I kind of view it as like, this doesn't make any sense, but kind of like a poem / epigraph. You know, it's like a poem light or whatever. But it came to me because I got the idea for it because the first line of it, which is how do you maintain a sense of awe? I was at this like artist talk, and one of my friends asked that question to the artist, and for some reason it just like really stuck with me because I find that a really interesting question, not even to ask of like an artist, but just of anyone in their life, because like maintaining a sense of awe is really important to me, just like living life. But also just thinking of it as a question posed to somebody who makes things. I was kind of just thinking about this over, like, I don't know, this idea of like the artist as God, you know, like making things in this way or feeling close to God by like making things. Yeah, and so I think I wanted those questions to kind of set the stage for the book, for at least me, of just kind of like always be like in the back of my mind as I was thinking of those things, yeah. And then the how, and I'm also just thinking now too, like the how do you maintain a sense of awe, how important that is for me in my life, but also how like like when I was living in California, my sense of awe was like constantly being engaged by just like the beauty of this. And I think that's why I was thinking about it in terms of like God or whoever like made this world that like exists, and also like an artist who makes things maybe to like honor the world or interrogate it or push back against it or something.
Wow. Well, great. Let's see, what else do I want to ask you? Oh, this is so your day job is you are a publicist at Catapult, and I'm just so curious what it's been like to be on the other side, to be the debut author. Usually you're working with debut authors or seasoned authors, and what it's been like to have your work come out and to now be the one having to answer these questions.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I've always liked to think that I have always like been empathetic with the authors that I've worked with, because I've always known that like I'm seeing them kind of at a very like vulnerable time in their writing career. It's like you sit in a room by yourself for however many years writing this thing, and then all of a sudden it's like coming out into the world, and that's really exciting, but it's also really scary and like a bunch of other different emotions. And so I kind of like knew what to expect about how I'd be feeling about it, just because I like, you know, work with, you know, authors for my job. But it's kind of like looking at a video of an apartment on Craigslist and then like seeing the apartment in person. And so I don't know, it's just like, well, it's like making me appreciate my job a lot more, which is interesting, of just like, oh, like what I do is valuable. And also I hope it'll like bring me to an even like closer understanding with the authors I work with.
Very cool. Well, great. Let's see what else I have here for you. Oh, I'm so excited to ask you this question. So, you're obviously very knowledgeable about visual artists and writers and just in general an art buff. If we were to build like the Lena Moses-Schmitt bibliography to take home and read and view and study, who are some of your biggest inspirations?
Oh my God.
And I hope you include graphic novelists too.
I will.
Okay.
No pressure to me. Yeah, I really love hearing how other people answer this question. And then this is one of those questions where whenever I get it, it's just like, I've never read a single thing in my life. But I really like books wise, I really love books that are kind of like hard to describe or genreless almost.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, or just like straddle a bunch of different genres. Like I really love Sheila Heti. I really love Rachel Cusk and Carson. Amy Fusselman has like a bunch of books that are like very experimental nonfiction, and some of them are like also like kind of nonfiction poetry. In terms of like graphic narratives, I love this French Canadian artist and writer named Julie Delport, and this other woman named Dominique Goblet. They both kind of do, like their drawings are really beautiful, but the text is also just like incredibly moving. And I find that like difficult as somebody who makes like graphic narratives. It's just like how to make the text as equally compelling as like the relationship between the text and the image. And then I guess, God, with artists, it's like, I don't even know. I mean, I think in this book, I have like a soft spot for painters, like, and especially abstract expressionist painters like Helen Frankenthaler and Joan Mitchell. But I also love David Hockney. Yeah. Does that even begin to answer?
I love it.
Who are yours, Leigh?
Oh my goodness. Wow. I love Sarah Manguso.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, she's another like genre straddling person.
Totally.
Too. Yeah.
And Anne Carson is maybe my all-time fave, so echoing that. Victoria Chang.
Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't say her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about her before.
Yeah. Those are some of my best ofs right there.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of poets, which I didn't even mention poets. Rude of me. Victoria Chang, Robert Haas, Louise Glick, of course, Mary Ruefle.
Yeah.
I love. I'm gonna be like so angry when I like remembering all the people that I like didn't mention.
I can't remember any graphic novelist name, but I feel like the like 5 best ones I've read were ones that you told me to read.
Oh my God! Of course, it's an honor to me.
Awesome. I'm curious when poetry came into your life, like when you first started writing poems or reading poems aggressively, because I know you've taken breaks and you've written a lot of nonfiction, you've done lots of visual art like we've talked about. But when did poetry begin, and then is poetry like a big focus in your life right now?
Well, okay, so I know that this is technically my first book, but I actually did write, famously in my immediate family, I wrote a book when I was 9 called Childhood, You Won't Be a Kid Forever. A book of like 6 poems. Dark, super dark. No, but I mean, I think like the first time I ever remember writing poetry was like, there was this guy who would come into our elementary school and do like poetry units. He was like a visiting like poet teacher, and I remember his name being Sandy Lyons, but that can't be right. But he would have us like write these like poems with titles like anger, sadness, happiness. And that was the first time I remember being like, poems are great. But of course I was like 9 and I wasn't reading poetry, I mean, I think the first time I realized that I really liked writing poetry in a serious way was in like my poetry workshop in undergrad, which made me want to go get an MFA to pursue poetry, to see if it was something that I actually wanted to, I don't know, like try to write seriously. And then it turned out it was. And yeah, I mean, I am writing poems right now, but like very, very slowly. So we'll see what happens.
Got it. it.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, good place to write poems?
Remains to be seen.
Okay. Okay, cool. Oh wow. Okay, we got some little that's cool.
Also,
Or
vibe it out if you want to.
yeah, okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you. I'm actually just gonna ask you one more question.
Yeah.
So a lot of your poems are ekphrastic poems,
Mm-hmm.
which is like poems about visual works of art. And you mentioned David Hockney shows up a lot, Joan Mitchell. I was wondering if you could give all of us an assignment, like a Be Like Lena assignment. Do you go to SF MoMA or wherever and bring your sketchbook and then write poems? How do you create these pieces? What's your process? Teach us.
Oh no. I have gone to museums with like a sketchbook before. Meaning like to draw. I like really like to draw like statues at museums. Not so much paintings for some reason. But I don't usually go to see art with like the intention of like, oh, I want to go to this because I want to write about it. But when it's something that I realize when I'm there, or I might realize after, if I'm just like, if I find something really interesting when I'm looking at it, or if I, see a description of something that makes me really like, something that like, just like kind of starts like scratching or something. And then I know that I want, or like I have like an experience or something. So in terms of like what that homework would look like, I guess it's just like to like go look at stuff. Really official. Yeah. But no, I mean like go, like I like to go to museums, but also just like to look at like the world around, and just like literally take notes on like any thought I might have that might be interesting. It might not be interesting later, but if it is, and it still is interesting to me, then I usually know that that's what I want to write about. So it's like, I think just like learning how to listen to my own thoughts and interests and to take them seriously and to write stuff down, even if I'm like, I don't know if this is interesting, because it might be interesting still later. Is that good homework?
That's great. Is everyone looking
really
forward
official
to doing
homework.
That? Awesome. Well, I'd love to open it up to questions to all of you all. If there's anything you'd like to ask Lena about this book, if you haven't read it yet, like just about her work or anything that strikes you. Oh, we already got one. Alicia.
Okay, I'm curious about place in your poems because I feel like I read a lot of like the Bay into your poems, but that's also just because I've like known you living here. But like thinking of the fact that this took 10 years, like you wrote it over the course of 10 years, you've like lived a lot of places in those 10 years. Do you feel like you wrote different poems? Like how did place kind of like impact? Did it like influence the poems that you were writing, or like did you find yourself writing different poems in different places?
Yeah, it's hard to know whether like it was like place or time that influenced more of these poems. I mean, living in California specifically did impact my poems, but I can't like I don't really totally know how yet. But I think it made me, I mean, I've always been obsessed with like, the image, and like imagery is so, my obsession with imagery was so, I guess it found a lot of outlets living in California, and nature. But yeah, I mean, I do think that the older poems in this book are like kind of more like the poems that I wrote maybe like, when in Virginia or when I was like leaving Virginia, or like, there were some of the poems were written when I was living in Texas. They feel like a bit more, I don't know, like lyrical or serious, which is not to say that that's like not my real voice, but I do remember having this moment where I kind of, when I was still writing those poems, kind of feeling like I was trying to sound like a poet instead of trying to sound like myself. And so I do remember having this moment, and it was when I was living in California, where I was like, I want to, like, what would it be like to like write more poems where I just sounded like myself instead of like trying to put on this like poet persona. That doesn't really answer your question, but
Yeah, I really love that first, the epigraph poem thing about, and that question, how do you know you've begun? It's very haunting as a writer, because oftentimes, like you write fiction and you're like, oh no, the story didn't start here, it started here. But my question is actually, how do you know it ended? Like, why not year 11? Like, how did you know? I mean, it's a little bit like the question Leigh asked you, but like, was it like, this is the theme that emerged and I have like, 50 poems, so we're good. Like, or, how did you know it's like ready?
Yeah, well, it's also interesting having like worked on this book on and off for like several years and seen different iterations of it. So like there are many different iterations of being like, okay, this book is done. And then like I would like, more time would pass and I'd be like, it's not done. But I think, I mean, I don't totally know the answer to that, although I am like really interested in that question still. I think it was just something that like this current iteration that ended up being published, it just like felt right and it felt done. And I had to just like trust myself, and like I had to trust the version of myself who was just like, this is done. Because like if I had kept thinking about it, you can easily like talk yourself out of that, and like there might have been like a different version of this if this hadn't gotten picked up. That might have been year 11. It might have been like a little bit different. And just like a different version of the book that wouldn't have been better or worse, just different. And so I think it's just like trying to keep that in mind, but it's difficult. Yeah. How did you know you were done with your chapbook, Leigh?
I think I was like editing it so much. I was taking some of the magic out of it and some of the lack of polish that's really beautiful in art. I had gotten to the point that I was worried I was ruining it. I was making it too tight and like too curated and exact, and it no longer had, if I had continued on that road, it wouldn't have had any charm.
Yes. Yeah. Like I think for me, something feels finished when I've like surprised myself and it's still mysterious to me, but like somehow feels done. But there's something about it there's still something about it that I can't totally explain to myself. Mm-hmm. And that inability to explain it makes it feel whole, because if I were able to explain it or it wasn't like mysterious to me, then it would just feel like dead.
Mm-hmm.
So true. Yeah. Yes, Laura.
So the book is populated with artists and thinkers, Isaac Martin, Mitchell, and I'm wondering how you think about the poem as like a site to be in dialogue with other thinkers and makers.
Yeah. So the question, in case anyone didn't hear it, was there are a lot of like artists and writers referenced in the poem. So how do I think about the poem as a site of being in dialogue with those things? I don't know. That is really important to me. And I feel like I write nonfiction too. And I feel like that comes from writing nonfiction somehow. And I think also like I write because I want to be in conversation with something else. And I want to include my whole thought process in the poem. And sometimes that includes like putting a quote that I heard or like a painting that I saw into the actual poem. It makes it feel like it's like a little gathering or like a little party or something.
I also love the experience as a reader of like reading something and then looking at the art piece referenced and then rereading the piece. Yeah. Something about that is so
I like that
fun
too.
For the reader.
And that's really fun with like Victoria Chang's work too. Yes. Or her recent work too.
Yeah. Yes.
Where does the title come from?
And my favorite poem in the whole collection.
Oh, that's so nice. So the title comes from, there's a poet in the book called Figure Drawing Elegy. And And there are a bunch of poems in the book that are about like the process of figure drawing. So like drawing somebody, usually in like my life, or I'm imagining drawing them. And this particular poem is I'm imagining drawing a friend / former mentor of mine who passed away. And she died of cancer. And so I'm drawing her in this poem, and it's kind of as a way to remember her, but also a way to like honor her. And as I'm like drawing, I'm asking all these questions like, am I, seeing her again as I'm drawing her? Is, what she looks like, does it have anything, is that actually her? Is she still alive if I draw her somehow? And in the drawing, in the poem, I, make a mistake in the drawing. And I, I'm talking about kind of like the idea of like making a mistake in a drawing. And I'm just like, is it my mistake? Is it the hand's mistake? Is it like the way that I saw something was a mistake? Am I like misremembering her somehow? And it kind of ends, the poem ends with these lines, and they're kind of angry, I think, which is that it goes, true mistakes are what the body makes. It didn't know what it was doing when it erased you. Just talking about like her illness. And also just like, and that just felt like really important to me as a title, just also like the idea of mistakes and like kind of wanting to, as a perfectionist, kind of like reclaim the idea of a mistake, and make it kind of something that could lead to more expansive understandings or possibilities instead of like something disastrous, or bad. So yeah, that's kind of where the title comes from. There's something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember what it is. Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of writers in the room, so I'll ask this question. It's a process question. But so I know when we're writing, and especially when we're writing across a long period of time, like 10 years, there's this tendency to get lost or feel like we're wandering through, a piece of what we're working on and whatnot. And there's like this need to recalibrate and find your bearings. And so I'm curious how you recalibrate and what you reached for to find your bearings, or what you reached for when you were working on this collection.
I think reading things that I know that I love is really helpful. It just like reminds me of like why I want to write. And also it like stimulates the thing in me that like wants to write. But yeah, I mean like looking at art, like looking and reading and like consuming things that I know that like I love and are stimulating is really, really helpful, and always a really good reminder. And also like going on walks. That's always like a helpful recalibration. And sometimes just like time, just taking time away from it and like not thinking about it at all allows me to approach with like fresh eyes, I think. Yeah. Leigh, what about you? I always want to pose the same question to you.
Oh man. I mean, I think I agree that sometimes it's like rereading a book I know that I love.
Yeah.
And even if you just get like the first few pages in and then you're like, oh yeah, I do like this.
Oh yeah, I like poems.
Yeah.
I like books.
I'd say that's probably but I also have, I want to start going to like see art in person and then try to write stuff. But sometimes even just looking at art coffee table books, if I'm really stuck, I'll just flip through one of those. Sometimes that's enough for me to be like, oh,
yeah.
I think I'm starting to get some ideas. One more question. Oh, Brad, how perfect you're rounding up. In case
Just in time.
In case any of you are those weird people who like read the dedication and then read the acknowledgments and then try to triangulate everyone in the poet's life. And you go on their Instagram and you're like, I think that's the person. I think the love poem is about this. And, this is Brad. The book is dedicated.
Get up here. Come on.
The book is dedicated to so you don't have to do that work anymore. I've done it for you. Go ahead.
too many. Alicia's question did get me thinking about the other part of the epigraph poem, though, the how do you maintain a sense of awe?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we have lived in 4 different states over the course of the earliest poem of this book, or the sort of like seedlings of the book, and now where we are now. So how have you been maintaining a sense of awe? Obviously in California, you were saying earlier, it was easy, or easier at least, just because of California, just because of like the nature and where you are, it's beautiful. But being in a totally different place now, in New York City, being in Austin, Texas is a different place, starting out in Richmond, Virginia, these are all radically different places. And I think it's connected to the question about place, but how do you find yourself now, at least like working to maintain a sense of awe? How has that changed, if it has at all?
I think I'm trying to figure that out. But I mean, there's that line in that poem that's like, that asks a hill or a skyscraper. And I think like New York is the skyscraper. So I think just like finding, I mean, New York is just so different from California in terms of like what makes it awe-inspiring. It's like the buildings, the architecture, the subway, like the clamor, you know, and then like those moments of respite in the city of like the parks and like just like the abundance of like people and like activity and energy. So I think that is where it is. But also, of course, there's plenty of art in New York. More things to look at, more stuff to look at.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And Laurel's going to come up here and finish off the night.